I'm Chris Hempstead. I'm with Mirae Asset Securities. Welcome to our podcast, OnTheVine. Today, I'm going to be joined shortly by Sylvia Jablonski with Defiance ETFs. I'm very excited to meet with her and talk about their product lineup. But real quick, as usual, a little bit of current event housekeeping. Recent news in ETFs, State Street, which is the third largest provider of ETFs, is lowering its fees on a suite of its ETFs, which could in fact spur another fee war in ETFs, which we saw back in 2019 when Vanguard started to cut fees on its S&P 500 funds. Now, interestingly enough, State Street is third in the asset tables behind BlackRock and Vanguard with about $1 trillion in assets, but they're second in revenues, only behind BlackRock. Part of the reason is they're eighth in the fee structure tables. Their average fee is 12 basis points, whereas some of the other low-cost providers with bigger assets are in the lower single-digit basis points. So this is an interesting move. We'll see what comes of it. Personally, I think fee wars are interesting to the end investor, but not always in the best interest of the asset manager. So we'll be particularly curious to see which funds decide to follow suit and lower fees. Separately, in other news in the ETF industry, Bill Ackman, famous hedge fund manager, has gone out on record saying he's going to short the 30-year, which is very interesting because there's been a massive amount of inflows into the 20-year this year. In particular, TLT has seen about $14 billion in inflows this year alone. So very contrarian view being laid out by Ackman. Curious to see what the street thinks of that, and we'll see how that plays out throughout the remainder of this year in 2023. That's about it for the current events, but I'm going to take this opportunity right now to introduce Sylvia from Defiance ETFs. She's a longtime friend and colleague and business professional who I think is one of the best speakers I've seen on CNBC and Bloomberg TV, speaking of ETFs and products. So Sylvia, come on in and get to it.
Thank you for that introduction, Chris.
You're welcome. No, I mean, it's been a while. You've been, well, why don't you tell us a little about where you came from? I guess that's fair for the audience. You and I met way back when you were, was it Direction? Was it your first?
It was, yeah, it was at Direction. I think we were talking when I walked in. I think it was about more than a decade ago now, but I had joined Direction in early 2019. So Direction is the levered and inverse ETF provider. And at that time, you were one of our lead market makers. You were trading our funds, and we were trying to grow a business.
One of the things that was interesting about that was, with leverage, it wasn't so straightforward. And when we came into the business, everything was very straightforward. And then all of a sudden, now we have swaps and swap counterparties and all these things, very complex stuff. Sylvia was a breath of fresh air to all of us because she could actually explain it to us. And so here we are, fast forward, probably 10 years, and now you are the CEO of Defiance ETFs, which I happen to know well because I remember when your first ETF came out, 5G, and remarkably, at the time that 5G came out, 5G was all the buzz on CNBC. It's all anyone was talking about on the news. They're like, what's 5G? Why does it matter? And I think at the time our phones were still like 3G, maybe 4G. And I remember I was working at a major global bank on the desk, helping to build out their ETF desk. And I remember one of the senior managers saying, I've never heard of this ETF, and these things never trade, and no one will ever buy this. And I just said, I'm going to go ahead and go against you on this one. I think it's going to go. And we want to seed it, and we want to put some money into it. And I think we'll be out really quick. And I think he said, I don't think you'll be out within the first 30 days. And I said, I think I'll be out on the first day. And I think it was the first 30 minutes of 5G's listing that we were out of all of our seed capital, and it was massive demand right out of the gate. And it was the hottest buzz for, a year. So where's 5G now? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, and so it wasn't a coincidence that 5G came out when the topic of 5G was hot, right? One of the things that we try to do, being a startup, or kind of back then being in startup mode, you have to think about how you're going to get the word out, how you're going to distribute product, how will you get attention. And if you don't have a huge sales force, you certainly need a good idea, and you need something that the market wants and something that you're going to get tailwind around. And at that point, it was all about 5G, the future of technology, the future of innovation. So that's why we came out with that ETF. And, kind of for better or worse, startup company, you get 5G, it quickly grew to $1 billion in assets. And then COVID hit. And the ETF really took off because then the story of the world was going to be 5G, connectivity, all of the technology that we need to survive this pandemic, and who knows how long it's going to go on. And then, of course, that came to an end and everything settles out. But yeah, to your point, I mean, it's still just hovering right below $700 million. It's our flagship ETF. It's one of the largest ETFs that we have. And it's actually getting a lot of interest again because there's so much interest in AI, machine learning, quantum computing, driverless cars, smart cities, all of these things. And in order for any of these technologies to come into play and actually come to fruition and exist, you need low latency and connectivity. And 5G is essentially what will power all of these, themes and innovations. So it continues to be one of their biggest allocations.
I mean, that was one of the driving points for my excitement, was the reliability of it. I guess reliability, not really knowing how reliable it would be. But when people would say, if you think there's going to be autonomous vehicles delivering goods and services throughout the world, that's great because it's coming. But it works really well in New York City, for example, or Miami, where there's a lot of connectivity. But if the truck has to go from Miami to Texas, there's a whole bunch of gaps in coverage along the way. So it's going to need, if it truly is an autonomous vehicle, it's going to need connections to something to make sure it doesn't crash into something else, or it gets there on time and it can communicate. And I mean, to me, that was the big buzz story. Now, let me ask you, maybe it's a question you don't want me to ask, but I'm going to ask it because it popped into my head and I promised I would do these things. So Elon Musk is up there dropping satellites off left and right in this Starlink program and all of that. Is that a threat to 5G or is that a complement to 5G, in terms of building a web of connectivity? Because that's another sort of effort that I see. It kind of creates this global connectivity and distribution potential. I don't know. I think that for now, it's very much a complement to 5G. So to your point, forget even autonomous vehicles and driving. And granted, that's something that, he has a vested interest in. Our cell phones don't work in different parts of the country. Right,
you can't even make a phone call or check a text, quickly enough. And so I do think that it's a complement to what 5G will be. And even Elon Musk and with all of his kind of autonomous vehicle projects and his, kind of like Space Link and things like this, he needs semiconductors. He needs, mobile carriers. He needs, potentially investment in REITs and things like this that, make up the 5G ETF. And I think that, as kind of that space grows as well and innovation grows there, you will see newer companies coming into the 5G ETF. Perhaps that company goes public and then it's kind of a no-brainer for a 5G component. But I think it's a complement at this stage. I don't think it's going to replace what 5G is today.
So Elon Musk, I can't believe it came up because I was going to ask about him as we talked about something else. So I'll just dive right into it because Elon Musk is no stranger to ETF conversations and good or bad for a number of reasons. But the hydrogen ETF. So now hydrogen energy, is obviously it's an interesting topic. It's way above my pay grade and knowing everything about it. I understand there are lots of benefits, there are lots of risks and things along those lines, but Musk was one in particular that came out publicly and said, no, there's no need for this, nothing to see here. But what do you
Yeah, I think again it's a complement to what he's doing, right? So interestingly enough, we also have an electric vehicle play that includes Musk. So they're side by side, right? We think that hydrogen, the most abundant element on the planet, is something that can be used to harness, store, and generate energy. You already have hydrogen powered boats and buses all around the world. You have a good amount of vehicles that are running on hydrogen. You have these companies like Ballard and Fuel Cell that have they're kind of like puttering in the market now, but they have really had a couple of epic years as these big investments in their infrastructure are coming into play. And I think that when we think about going carbon neutral, there are limited resources in the world. And, it is something that comes up with batteries for EVs, right? So it's, again, I think about this as a complement. You can have electric vehicles that exist in the world, and you can also have hydrogen powered vehicles that exist in the world. So we just think that it's that electrification, kind of purification of the way we live, work, play, and travel that has a shot of really A, helping the climate, but B, also generating investment interest.
So the ticker on that is HDRO. And so some of the companies that are in that, are they small cap, emerging kind of companies? Is your vision or is the timeline for an investor to be thinking about when to get into something like HDRO? Is that, I don't know. I mean, we're coming into a political season. Obviously, that could be very interesting. But I mean, is that a 5-year play, a 10-year play? I mean, my kids should be looking at HDRO because the companies that are in it are at the forefront of hydrogen technology. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's at the forefront of innovation. It's at the forefront of technology in the energy space, and it definitely falls into that alternative investment type of play. But I think that it's a trade that will take 5 to 10 years to pan out, whereas today's trade is arguably EV, right? The growth there has just been insane. So that's kind of our long-term innovation play on energy. The short-term play would be the EV fund.
Interesting. Very interesting. And then the last one I definitely wanted to hit on in terms of your product suite is your AI fund. Look, I mean, I'm so excited about AI from a personal advancement standpoint. I can go to these various different bots and ask questions and get quick answers. But at the same time, I've got concerns, right? Because, does AI pose a threat to innovation and creativity, for humanity? I don't even know. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Or does it just make us faster and better at everything? And how do you invest in AI? I get the concept behind it, I guess, a little bit, but how do you make an ETF out of AI? And what is your...
It's QTUM, so it's meant to be like quantum. It represents. So we look at AI we look at it holistically. So we think AI is more than just artificial intelligence. It's just a word, right? You have to have data. You have to process the data. You need super fast and powerful computers to process the data. So that's where quantum and supercomputing come in. But to your point, I mean, there are certainly a lot of ethical kind of concerns and questions around it. The way that we look at it is we think about which companies are most invested and directly related to generating, revenues from AI as they help to kind of bring other industries forward. So, for example, in healthcare, AI would be relevant to robotic surgeries. It would be relevant to supercomputers that parse data from physicians around the world doing cancer research and allow that data to be universally available within, a couple of minutes instead of 10 hours and permission slips and things like this to get to like one huge computer that's sitting in the Midwest that, and that's how they sort of do it now from what we've learned. But it's defense, it's more accuracy on, data targets, things like that. It's banks having a better sense of what an actual client's risk profile is, what an investment's risk profile is, and on. Retail, just targeting you with the right things that you should be buying and all of that. So I think that, there are, and if you kind of like think also bigger picture, what are the major issues that we have? We haven't been able to find workers for years, right? So even using machine learning, data, and AI to power factories better, to manage supply chains better, to really understand how many workers you need, replace some of them, make others more efficient. So we try to think about the good in that. We hope that not everyone is using ChatGPT to do their term paper, not learning anything in high school. But so we look at all of the companies and the subsectors of AI that generate, half of their revenues from AI investments.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. There's so many possibilities, and I struggle with it a little bit. I think, I'm sure back in the, I'll pick on the 50s or something like that. I'm sure there were some curmudgeon people that were saying computers can't do everything. You got to do everything on paper. It's the only way to make sure it's accurate, and how wrong they could have been, right? But I guess AI is our version of that now. Is oh my gosh, what else can they throw at us?
Yeah.
But I don't see where it ends. And from an investability standpoint, I struggle with it a little bit to think like, well, if a company embraces AI entirely to try to make them a little faster, a little more advanced, is there a scorecard or something that says, okay, now it's eligible to be in QTUM, or is it more companies that are on the forefront of developing AI technology that would meet the qualifications for the fund? Like, how does that?
Yeah, it has to have. So we're big on purity, right? Like we try to create funds that are, because there are a lot of thematic ETFs out there, and we try to think about themes that are going to be the next. You mentioned State Street in your intro, like that next spider sector select. Like AI is going to be an actual sector. Hydrogen will be a sector. EV will be. These will be less kitschy themes and actual long-term investments. And so for us, we try to look at companies that, identify revenues based on their AI investments, their machine learning investments, their supercomputing capabilities. So they have to have operations, R&D, something along the lines of these things that is very clear cut with a number on the balance sheet. So that's how we look at it. It's a passive ETF, it tracks an index. So we're not, kind of actively managing. But if you think about the names in it, they're, and to your point, like, because people I've been asked this question so much, look what happened a couple of years ago. That kind of meme trading is just gone. And what I say is, like, NVIDIA is not a meme trade, right? That's arguably the biggest AI name. Microsoft, HP, Oracle, Ericsson, Texas Instruments, like these aren't meme trades, right? These are existing tech stocks that are really carving a space out for themselves in a new, segment of tech in the AI space.
Who are their clients? Is it manufacturers? Is it, Scott Tissue Paper saying, we need your technology to get into the market? Is that really?
I think it's anyone and everyone. I think it starts with kind of the generals, right? It's Amazon first for themselves, and then creating the solution that they can sell to other clients to better their supply chain, their e-commerce system and things like that. But I think in terms of an investment opportunity. So right now, all the hype is around the components of AI and whatnot. And then this will later play out, though. If you think about like biotech companies that will have better drug data, will come up with, drugs that pass more trials, have better results and things like that. You can think about where the puck is going and how AI investments can change over the year.
Yeah, I swear, the other day I thought about a chocolate chip cookie, and on my phone, a chocolate chip cookie ad came up. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, how? I don't want to know how. I don't ever want to know how AI can read my thoughts. But Sylvia, thank you so much for coming in. It's been really fun catching up, and I know we'll be catching up a lot more in the months and years to come as well. So thank you for being a guest on our podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
As we start to wrap up our show today, I'd like to just tell you some of the things that we're thinking about on the desk. We'd love to get your input. We'd love to get your thoughts, your concerns, your questions. But again, this is going to be a repetitive theme, I think, for the next, foreseeable future, at least in our world, is the 2024 presidential election, which is sure to earn lots of attention in terms of media coverage and other things. But most importantly, I think for us as investors and managers is, what impact the conversations in the political environment in 2024 are going to have on our investment portfolios. So there's a recent buzz around Bidenomics versus Trump's plans from when he was in office. Who's going to be in front? Are they too similar? Are they dissimilar? Is technology, and clean energy going to, win to this or lose to this economic year that we're coming into? What are some other things that we're talking about? Clean energy. We're talking about electric vehicles, which we just talked about. There's healthcare. There's biotechnology. There's all kinds of really contentious topics that have real impact on our investments. I don't know the answers. I don't have a crystal ball, but we do want to help guide you to solutions that meet your concerns or criteria on a particular sector. So if you really think you want to be able to hedge or be invested in a particular sector or a theme or a thematic type of strategy that is probably at risk of being either super beneficiary or badly the recipient of pain as a result of political decisions and policy as it comes out of the election year, those are the kind of challenges we're up for here at Mirae Asset Securities, helping you find the right solutions to go long or go short based on what you're seeing. But there's a lot in play. It certainly doesn't feel like it's going to be a light political season. I think there's going to be a lot on the table, and we're really looking forward to watching it all play out. And we want to make sure you're armed with the right tools. So don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again. I'm Chris Hempstead with Mirae Asset Securities and OnTheVine podcast.